want to start this one a little bit tongue in cheek and saying, a lot of people would say, uh, where can I find God? Where can I learn about God? Where can I hear from God? And I would say, where can we get away from God? And only to say that in a lot of our goings on, like the very things that we say, the very things we do, the things that we see, if we can approach them in a in a in a creative way, there can be a lot of insight and directive. Like a lot of us seek, like what is the higher purpose for our life. There's a lot of directive in any and anything, if we can appreciate challenge and inspiration together. So challenge and inspiration together can be we can start taking all manner of insight and direction, to where when we get to going in a direction that we hadn't intended, that's where the best discoveries come from. So I was talking today. I was at a coffee shop, and then a beautiful woman was like, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a while, or I haven't seen you in a long time." And I was like, "Well, I haven't seen me either, because we never actually looked at ourselves without a mirror before." So she was like, "I hadn't heard that one," but then I was kind of running with that, and that actually might be a starting point, and maybe a creative exercise for anyone watching this video. Where I would say, any video you land on YouTube or anywhere, or any person you have anything to do with, if you don't get a challenge from it, then it in a way it's not. It may actually be more detrimental, because one, it may be wasting your time, distracting you, or over informing you. But if it doesn't extend a challenge, then you may not really grow from that and become better. Because I think that's what we're all looking for. We're looking to experience new thoughts. At the end, I think that's what some people say, that girls just want to have fun. But I would up the ante and say that girls just want to experience new thoughts, and so do men. We all just want new thoughts, and therefore new experiences. So to upset whatever I had going on in my thought life today, or whatever I thought I was gonna talk about or do today, I experienced that. So I wanted to come with a challenge with that. So this is an honorable mention. This is a book called The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. And she's a choreographer she's a veteran choreographer. There's probably people that could explain what she's about better than me, but all I know is that she's a choreographer, and she's very creative. If you read that book, you can really come away with an appreciation of what it means to be a creative person, above and beyond, and a part of being an artist or anything. I think almost anyone from any background, any interest, could benefit from that book in some of the ways that she's approaching creativity and landing upon original thought. Fundamentally, that can inform dance, that can inform writing, that can inform music, that can actually inform something like maybe work in the trades. Because I know that people who work in the trades, the first, I flirted with the trades a little bit, but I got bounced right out of there because I was getting smoked by everyone in the training, men, women, old, young. I was getting smoked in that training. But what I wanted to say is that even if you were to do something like in the trades, which would seem like the farthest thing from art, the first thing they're looking for in tradesmen is people who can solve problems fundamentally. And that on anything we do, I would say it amounts to, to be good at it, it amounts to solving problems. And that's from both recognizing and accepting challenges, like that challenges are part of opportunity. So recognizing and accepting challenges and engaging with them in a truly inspirational way, and approaching things, considering a different angle, a different perspective. That might be the best way to solve anything, and kind of where I want to go with this video. But one thing that she says in that book is that she challenges people to stop looking at mirrors. I think that a mirror gives us a false sense of ourselves in a lot of ways, because the way, I've worked with students for a long time. I've worked in professional transportation for the last 4 years, and as you know, in all manner of society, we're inundated with cameras. Maybe that's probably a double-edged thing. So it's probably our one of our greatest safety measures, but yet also our undoing, in just the fact that there are cameras in all places. And part of that is that most aspects of privacy have been obliterated whether we recognize that or not. And that's very, I think that's one of the most, that's one of the most dangerous and detrimental things about modern human society. As I would say, like one of the chief red flags that the chief indications of a red flag that can be experienced in any endeavor, any relationship, is the breaching of privacy. Part of this series is to go that if there were anything more detrimental than the breaching of privacy, it would be the functioning of paternalism or entitlement as the highest rung of a detriment and a warning indication in any endeavor, but also the lowest part, because the opposite ends of a spectrum overlap. So as toddlers and babies and very young people are just coming into life, they're already experiencing some of the detriments of paternalism and entitlement, and then going all the way through the spectrum to the highest ends of like perhaps like privacy being breached, the highest ends of detriment, and also the highest functioning within human beings. It's still yet fettered and blunted and obstructed by different levels of paternalism. I would say our very president may may encounter paternalism in different ways, because we obviously don't know what the higher dynamics of who has to answer to who, but on a level, all of us will encounter paternalism somehow, some way. You can be a business owner, you can be self-employed, but yet on a certain point, you will come across entitlement and paternalism, I think. But and that's also kind of, I wanted to get back to that with this video, but all I meant to say is that this book, it challenges a person not to look at themselves in the mirror. And so like when I'm doing like this work with where there's all professional transportation roles where you're dealing with the public, whether that be school age children or like a city bus, there's likely to be like a surveillance going on there. And one of my safety managers from another base, we had a strong relationship, and he actually he commended me because I was the safest driver at that base in my rookie year among all the veterans, according to the metric system of that bus that recorded our behavior and driving performance. So both the soft skills and the hard skills of the bus were captured by that surveillance. But what he once told me is that so when I was there, I had been like the second ranking in performance. So they would call me like number two. There's number two. I was like, that don't sound right, because that sounds like I gotta go to the bathroom or something. But then I caught up with him later. He said, no, you had actually been the number one according to for that school year, according to the metrics. But all I meant to say is that one time he told me that a camera, even if you have like a camera in a you have, because in a bus, they have very sophisticated cameras that can capture all types of angles and audios that we're actually never briefed on as drivers. All we know is that the experience of the cabin is being recorded in like scientific exact detail on a profound level. But he said even within that, because he was showing me like, this is my phone, like I can see all these little dumbass drivers in here. But he's like, I see that one, I can see what he's saying right now, because I was riding with him one time when he was training me on a roll. But he was saying that camera can only it only tells so much of the story. Say in any story there's at least two sides of the story, being at least having two people to make a story. But then on top of that, you have the camera, that's yet a third angle. And yet within all that, there's still yet an arbitrary, or there can still be something lost in translation, even in all that, even in the scientific detail of that camera. So I want to say similarly, as we encounter ourselves, like say we perceive ourselves, like as I'm speaking, I'm looking at myself in the camera, my iPad, and it gives me a little bit of it gives like some of like, you might see me like do like different like mannerisms, or like even like smiling while I'm making a video, and that's partly because I'm looking directly at myself, and it gives me something to work with in terms of feedback. So it really is an exercise in talking to oneself in this in YouTubing, in going off the cuff like that. But it's yet a skill set at the same time. But all I meant to say is that even doing that, there's something lost about it, and there's something artificial about it. As sophisticated as the camera is, as like digital imaging is, in a certain way, it could almost be called a cartoon, because it's very similar to what you're experiencing, whether you're viewing something or viewing yourself like I am. It's still being filtered and ran back to you to create an image, an illusion, as though you were looking at something real. But that's yet it can be equated to a cartoon. And there's something called verisimilitude. I think that word may appear in her book. Verisimilitude is like art that is very similar to life. Like so you can have like a painting that would be like a caricature, but if you had something that's like exact detail and it looks like reality, like it's close to reality, that's called verisimilitude within art. But I think at the same time, it's still yet similar to a cartoon. Looking at something on video, even something with like a camera detail. But then I think that looking at a mirror might be similar to where that mirror, for one, the mirror is flat, so I can't talk about all the dynamics of light, what's going on with the mirror, but all I know is that it's not the same thing as looking at a person, and I don't think that you appear exactly the same way in a mirror that you would appear to other people. Your energy, your the subtle aspects of viewing you would be different, but just simply I don't think that it's the same thing as experiencing someone directly as looking in a mirror. And so I think that looking at a mirror gives us different false notions about ourselves. And I think that like sometimes I have like I've been getting my wardrobe up, and like sometimes people will they will try to jack your style or do different things. But I think that when people are like trying to get the ups on a person, like say I was like getting ready to go into like a sporting match with another person, and they're like watching content on me, like, see, he likes to do this, and then he always drops his foot like this. People are doing the same thing with us on a lot of levels, whether that be our financial maneuvers, our maneuvers in appearance, our maneuvers in, people are always trying to get an angle on us. That's just something about being human. I think as humans, we were hunters in nature, so we were always trying to understand and analyze a natural environment to get one up on it, and it continues to this day in how we deal with each other. But if a person is trying to figure you out, I think the main thing that they can tap into, because in order to perceive something, you have to be something. So in a certain sense, all that we perceive, we actually are what we are perceiving. You cannot perceive something without being it on a deep level. And that's kind of where I'm coming from sometimes when I say that we are one another when we're looking at one another. But what I meant to say is that if someone's trying to figure you out, they have to see something that they already understand or that they can feel that they already have within them. And what is it that we all share is vanity. So whatever you look at, whatever you think about yourself while looking in the mirror, whatever you just think about yourself in general, consciously, that's what another person can hone in on and emanate with and resonate with. And if you're vain enough, they can anticipate you and meet you somewhere to your disadvantage. So I just want to put that out there. And then part of transcending that, I think the first step might be to refrain from looking at mirrors. And then I think that should we go without looking in a mirror for up to a week, that could really shear a lot. I think that could shear a lot of conceit and vanity in itself, and just lend itself to original thought, I think. So with this video, I'm challenging all people watching this video, and I'm going to step up to it to avoid looking yourself directly in a mirror for 1 week. And see, you maybe if you have to look at your clothes, that's one thing, but avoid looking at yourself directly in a mirror for 1 week, and see if some original thoughts don't occur to you, or just see if you don't have some type of mental functioning and clarity as a function of not looking at yourself for 1 week in a mirror. And that's based on Twyla Tharp, so I wanted to shout her out as honorable mention. Maybe because I was wanting to come with so going deeper. So I wanna offer this video and then a lot of my content in the spirit of the film Good Will Hunting. If anyone is old enough from the 90s can remember, that was a beautiful film with the great Matt Damon playing that. He's playing a savant person, a very intelligent person who has he's so intelligent that he recognizes the vanity within the general rat race, even though he works as he has a humble role as a custodian in a high-end university, I think in the Boston area. He has a distinct Boston accent, and if you know anything about like academia and college and university, some of the greatest in the oldest, but yet also to this day the strongest education systems or schools emanate around that Boston area. My alma mater, Berkeley College of Music, is in the Boston area. Harvard is in the Boston area. MIT is in the Boston area. There's a lot of just deep history about education and learning in the Boston area. So it's actually kind of uncanny that film Good Will Hunting and its subject matter took place in Boston, and then yet he has this thick Boston accent. But at one point he was confounding some hotshot college students in a bar where they were they were proud of their learning and their status as college students at an elite school, and yet he was a janitor, but he had studied, he had done self education or self erudition of his own initiative with different books he could get his hands on, like at a local library and stuff like that, to the point that he could actually confound them on topics of like history. He also is portrayed as being very strong in math, but no less than history. He's able to confound these students with things he had picked up in like a library, with books that he actually didn't own and had rented, probably likely very cheap or free. But that is a greater message that he's an intelligent and a gifted person, and yet he's also studious on top of that, of his own initiative, which anything that we do of our own initiative, I think, is much stronger than what we do of another person's initiative. Even attending some of these very strong schools, we're submitting work to a teacher for review, and on some level our understanding of how our work will be received by a teacher somewhat alters, I think, the work we put forward, so that there's something very disempowering and disingenuous about the dynamic of formal education. I think that might be a lot of what young people experience in school. I've served different young people over my life, and there are a couple of times where they made comments about how it's not that they don't enjoy reading or learning, but they don't enjoy being told what to read and told what to learn. So that's very significant in itself, and it's reminiscent of this film, Good Will Hunting. But in that, the premise is just that he's a very intelligent person, a gifted person. He's also a learned person, he's done the work to go with that. And then on top of that, he has recognized a lot of the vanity and but also the incongruencies, like I've mentioned in other videos, about our modern social reality, and some of the type of organizations that had already been recruiting him in that film, or could potentially recruit him, and pointing out the absurdities, and how he recognized that his very gifts could be used to injure people who have never done anything to him, or even himself, if he were to engage with these different somewhat dishonest but powerful opportunities that he recognized, and is why he had deigned not to engage with a lot of modern modern opportunities, and was content to operate as a janitor and educate himself, which one could say that might actually be a stronger position than a lot of other things, because if you can actually do something that you're good at, that serves a purpose, and that affords you a little bit of leisure or leeway to do things that are enjoyable to you, no less than learning, and you have a healthy, decent standard of living, what that means to you, that in itself is a very strong position, and it may yet be stronger than something more affluent, where you may have more status or even income, but you don't have one may experience more paternalism even at a higher rung of what's considered success, but then you also may not have the actual initiative and say so to truly exercise decision and agency in your own life or your own profession. And then also you may be fettered by, you may have time constraints to where you could be potentially cash rich and time poor. But his friends have recognized that they appreciate him as having squandered his potential. But so all I want to say is that all that can be taken a different way, but in the greater spirit of that film, in the appreciation for natural human intelligence, which the author Osho says that all human beings are in all the universe, and all human beings are essentially intelligent upon birth and throughout life, but our different vanities, conceits, and false notions about ourselves and others limit some of our own intelligence, not the least of which I think is our conception of linear time, which I think is a deep form of conditioning that fundamentally limits a person's understanding of themselves and reality, to where much is squandered through the conception of linear time. As it's been conditioned with the understanding of a clock, from the earliest points of development all the way to transitioning out of this life, we are yet in proximity to and fettered by our understanding of linear time. But so in the greater spirit of that film is that I want to say one with this one is that how was I going to say that all of human suffering can be amounted to a cakewalk. How do you like them apples? And anyone who's seen that film can appreciate that's in the spirit of Good Will Hunting. And what the hell do I mean by saying something like that? Is that and that's kind of just a little bit where I wanted to go with so I kind of want to go in a couple of different directions. One is that I left no less than about 4 videos, including this one, leaning into discussing paternalism and how and people are like, what the hell are you talking about paternalism? Are you talking about letting people go hog wild? What are some young people without direction? What are anyone without direction and oversight? So that there's that. And then so what I want to say is that I get that, and that there is a need for discipline, and that's exactly what I'm coming with this video. But what is real discipline? And then with that is that how can all suffering be amounted to a cakewalk? Now I've extrapolated in this video that the fundamental impetus of all inequity and therefore all suffering by extension on some level, all suffering that's within the realm of being mitigated or transcended through propriety, like good decision making, and then like equity, like a collaboration within people. All suffering that is within the realm of control that can be accounted for can be amounted to externalities, which are like direct and indirect consequences of the functioning of gentrification. I think what I'm calling digitalism as a detriment, adventurism, capitalism, industrialism, feudalism, different points of slavery within that, and one could say that slavery is imminent within all of that, from the very conception of feudalism to the current digitalism. One could say that is attended by and is a function of what's still slavery. But then and then within all that, within so gentrification would be almost like the concept of inequity. But I would think that the actual fundamental, as it's experienced and as it's the mode of functioning, is paternalism, simple paternalism, which could also be equated to entitlement, with the threat, with the underlying conveying of imminent either punishment or deprivation. Do as I say. I know what's best I know what's best for you. I know what's best for us, and I know what's best for you. I know what's best for me. Therefore, I know what's best for us. And in that dynamic, there cannot be reciprocity and true respect, I don't think, in that dynamic. But yet discipline is still necessary for all of us. But in that dynamic in itself, that you can only imagine, if I say something like that if I say something like that to someone and it go over between us, and that's the understanding, how is it possible for the latter subject to come out stronger than that? Unless I just I do something really unless I would say maybe entitled people do manage to unseat themselves and undo themselves, like maybe an emperor, like where one could say that a person who's being overbearing, they do manage to destroy themselves, and that's actually so that's valid too. But at least in that dynamic at that moment, the feeling is that the person who's taking a stance of authority is going to get the better of that interaction. And I think that has actually happened in a lot of the phases of gentrification, like what we see in different regions of the world, where the people who are on the receiving brunt end of paternalism, and i.e. means that is paternalism and i.e. gentrification, the people on the brunt, getting the brunt of that, they have been disenfranchised to the point of being obliterated and having different lines of descent. I think maybe the highest outcome of gentrification is for a person or people to die without issue. That's without having like progeny or family that follows behind us, and that is what's called genocide, and that is genocide. That's the most brutal aspect of that's the imminent outcome and the most brutal aspect of gentrification, disenfranchisement, I think. And yet people who are even people who comprise and benefit from gentrification itself, disenfranchisement. I think their inevitable consequence is the same fate that they've extended to other people. It may be a little bit extended, but I think that disenfranchisement, inequity, it amounts to obliteration for both subjects and victims. Maybe the victims sooner, but then the subjects, their own means redouble back upon them. The author Chris Hedges has said that whatever we export, it comes back to us. So like he takes like the United States or the Western in general has exported military adventurism, yet we see more and more violence in our societies back on this side of the front. And that's an example of our own misdeeds and misdoings redoubling back around us, so we get a taste of our own medicine. But there's another book by Arthur Avalon that I often quote, and it talks about a talented, like a very talented pupil, and so much talented that he is impressed by his own power, and he managed to unseat and undo his own like teachers and proctors, and he becomes I'm not sure if so he becomes like a force to be reckoned with, similar to like the one who must not be mentioned in the series Harry Potter, like a similar figure like that, where a very gifted person, and then that person, it's kind of strange that in that film, the one who must not be mentioned is reputed in the protagonist, Harry Potter himself, is reputed to be conversant with snakes. And that very book that I first picked up by Arthur Avalon is titled The Serpent Power. So there's probably a lot that could be said about snakes figuratively that we could run with. That's actually an idea right there. But the premise is that he becomes so possessed of his own giftedness and power, yet it does not have scruples with that he becomes a force to be reckoned with in a problem. And yet such a problem that he cannot be confronted directly, or he cannot be overdone or overcome from without. So with this, there's a story in Arthur Avalon about a similar allegory in Eastern thought, which a lot of the themes of allegories are yet not, they're interchangeable, yet that almost permanent, where some people would say there's only so many things you can do with the storyline, and a lot of our stories across different cultures and heritages are a function of these simple, or these more these certain storylines, but what has to happen with, I think it was like a creature that was like heinous and awful and destroying the world, and the only way that they could undo that creature was to they somehow managed to make that creature agree to something, that they made it agree to something, but then they had been a little bit clever in what they made it agree to. So it turned out that it had agreed to something upon terms that were not what it had thought it was, even though it was being dishonest. And so that creature had to, it basically had to, it had to destroy itself by the force of its own honor, similar to like a samurai having to fall on their own sword, which if something is deadly and entrenched enough, it must be undone by its own might and its own effort. So, and I said in another video that the most detriment that someone or something can experience is a function of its own participation and effort. So like, when different people are having to sign contracts and stuff like that, they're actually doing the most egregious thing that can be done to a person, which is to make a person, their own agreement and initiative work against them. That's what's happening in stuff like contracts. But it can be also done like maybe in a righteous way, where this allegory in a book of Arthur Avalon's, a heinous creature that had become once a student that amounted to a force to be reckoned with could only be handled by making it agree to something and then having to undo itself with its own strength. That's how that had happened. So in talking about things like gentrification, maybe the only way that gentrification can be undone would be it would have to agree to undoing itself. But what I wanted to say is that, but within the greater thing, within gentrification, which I would say gentrification and genocide is the same thing. It's just a different phase of the same thing. But within that, the actual essence of that and what is attendant of all the dynamics within gentrification and thus genocide is a sense of paternalism, I think. An experience of paternalism. But yet, discipline is still necessary. So, I'm going in a couple of different directions. But what did I mean by cake like that? Is that if you can imagine what I understand like gentrification is that if you've ever seen a cakewalk where like let's say like in a lot of dating and romance has been equated to a cakewalk, which is that people are getting in and then someone's always left out. There's always like an odd man out. And the author Arthur Avalon says that in any sexual liaisons, there's at least 4 people present because each person is dual. So there's almost like 2 people in each person. So one could say you have your father. So as I'm speaking, I am the best parts of both my father and my mother. It's integrated, organic, and it's collaborative. So it's the best of both together. But yet in essence, I am still at least both of them. And so at least I'm the best of both of them. So from that perspective, I'm kind of like 2 people. And I've also said that we have 2 of most things. So we have like 2 brains, 2 nostrils, 2 feet, 2 different, the different organs and so forth. But then we also have dual psyche. So one could even say, in a certain sense, we have 2 genders because we have a masculine leaning side and a feminine leaning side. And most people could appreciate that as the actual balance and dynamicism that makes ourselves and life possible. But within that, one could even say that we do, in fact, have 2 genders. And as we lean to one or the other, it's more manifest. And that's like what we present as. I think some people would say in terms of like present. And where it's been said that a male is more so masculine in their conscious liminal mind, but more so feminine in the subconscious subliminal mind, and then a female is the exact reciprocal of that, being more so masculine feminine in conscious liminal like mannerisms and personality, but the subliminal part is more masculine, and that's why Osho says that females can be appreciated as being somehow a little bit more pragmatic, like common sense. Like you can imagine, like a man is like, oh, I just got an opportunity to go to the moon. NASA had been recruiting people, and they found out that I was a custodian at the college, but that I had been reading a lot of books, and then the professor figured out that actually I knew way more than the students, and then they had been a little bit entitled, and then so they gave me an opportunity, and they're actually gonna give me a special training, and we're gonna get paid for that training as a stipend, and then in about like a year and 6 months, I'm gonna actually go to the moon on a rocket, and then I'm gonna get to plant. I'm gonna. So you can just see like how that would sound to a woman is like. And what are you going to do on the moon? Like Osho said something about that. Like when we start about these different stuff, we're talking about, like a woman said, and what are you going to do on the moon? But that's an example of how sometimes a woman could be like more pragmatic or even masculine in a sense. And we as men are we're indulging in different fancies, whether that be an adventure or an insight or even like getting up on here and hopping about a video like that. But we're dual like that. And then so also one could almost say we have like 2 personalities with that, 2 genders, 2 personalities, 2 of all things. I almost completely I'm a little bit losing my train of thought. I was trying to like tie a lot together there, but so 4 people. So in love making, one could say there's at least 4 people present because there's the 2 lovers at least. And then there's the dual nature and heritage and essence of both those people, where you could say there's 4 people taking place in a sexual encounter, and it kind of does feel like that a little bit. Like if you're like like even if you're winning with someone, there's like different angles and aspects of yourself where it almost kind of does feel like there's more than just the 2 of you there. But then with that, I want to say that one could maybe say that within any so there's at least 4 people present in a from Osho's perspective in a love-making encounter. But one could say like in a relationship dynamic, there's always at least 3 people present because there's always there's the lover, there's the 2 lovers, and then there's the one that waits outside the window wondering what's going on in there. That sounds like a little bit creepy, but I mean like as any 2 people are falling in love, there's at least one other person who would have maybe liked to fall in love with one of them, or would be is going to have to find someone else now that they're together. You know, you get together with someone and they're talking about, oh yeah, like I just got that phone ring. Like, say that had been a beautiful woman, which I doubt it was. As I'm talking here, I'm getting hit up by something on the side. So one could say that there's that dynamic in probably like people like with the background in like different like understanding the mind, they could probably enunciate that clearer. But I think that part of the dynamic of like a love affair is like it's almost like it's always like a maybe we could say that all love affairs are some form of a menage a trois, whether that other person is present or not. And whether that other person is having fun together or not, there's always at least one other person who got for any invitation that's extended, someone else didn't get that invitation. Is all I'm trying to say. So amounting our plight to a cakewalk is like, if you've seen a cakewalk and people are walking around and it's all good, and then when the music stops, they're trying to like get that seat, you know. But it's kind of brutal in a way. It's like, cause like you get in that seat, and then their ass is out after you get in that seat. You know, we had all been together and maybe they hadn't even been playing Kumbaya, but when the music stopped and we get in our seat, your ass is out. And that's how I understand gentrification and then even genocide itself. We're paying we're together ostensibly. But then when the music stops, that's when it gets real, and someone's getting out like that, and then that's how people are marginalized right out of their families, right out of their neighborhoods, right out of their jobs, right out of existence. Is that cakewalk like that? So from that perspective, that things can be appreciated as a cakewalk, or like all of all the detriments that extend from gentrification. Can be both that cakewalk, but then on a more personal level, if you look at the suffering that people would go through, like interpersonally, like in developing as human beings, and then being able to relate to other people, a lot of times that doesn't go over too well. Sometimes the roughness of it might actually be a blessing at the end of the day, because this universe is reciprocal. So where something is lost, something else is gained, and there's a silver lining. So I'm not trying to say it's all bad that people struggle interpersonally and socially, but we could say that, and it's been recognized that a lot of that stems from what people experience in their family, the nuclear family, the situation that they were raised in. And I have said in other videos that I think that a lot of the concept and the way that a modern family functions, at least in recent times, in the nuclear family, is a functioning mode of paternalism. Both our understanding of our relationships, my brother, my father, my sister, talking like feudal allodial titles that had to do with inheritance and mitigating resources. Like this is the manor we're from, and this is the estate we live on. This is what each person's role is. This is what each person's relationship to another person is, and this is how resources are going to be shared. That's very feudal, like that. Like you can talk about like titles like Baron and Lord, or Knight. These different feudal allodial titles. Even landlord nowadays might be one of those. But then even within the smaller, more intimate settings of that family, or people who understand the relationships in those terms that are reflections of, or hangovers of feudalism, the dynamics in that, it amounts to a form of paternalism. Do as I say, or you may be punished, or you may be deprived. It's such as getting your ass outside in the cold weather, no less, or not having access to food, or not having access to different opportunities if you're not on page. That's what's experienced in paternalism, and it's very painful. It may be subtle, but it is very painful. It is very disenfranchising, and it amounts to different interpersonal struggles that then proliferate and transmute into any other form of struggle. So I'm saying that in that paternalism is still a function of, like, similar to a cakewalk, is that it's entitlement, and it's getting the better of another person to the other person's loss, like a cakewalk would be, and then your ass is out. And so I'm saying that from that perspective, and then I wanted to go a little bit deeper, which is that's actually the way that chemistry functions. Chemistry, it exists in like different wavelengths, and that are very sophisticated. But all of chemistry can be amounted to behavior, individual it's very similar to like relationships, like attraction and relating to people, and then also sharing with people. There's something called like an ionic bond, which is like a bond of attraction, which is like two things that are just attracted because one is more so positive and one's more so negative, so they're coming closer like that. And then there's something called like covalent, which is that they're actually sharing now. They're sharing what would be like subatomic particles, and there's a bond based on that. And each of those bonds are different, but it's very similar. Like